From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Does the state of Tennessee have a growing prison problem? Did a recent outside audit done by the American Corrections Association address the issue, or does more need to be done? And are our corrections facilities likely to be on the list of state buildings to be privatized? And what about the food system inside the prison system? Today on Inside Politics, we've invited Nashville State Senator Jeff Yarbro and Tennessean reporter Dave Boucher to just discuss these questions, and perhaps we'll get around to a couple of other controversies going on Capitol Hill right now. Gentlemen, thanks both of you for coming on the show.
Thanks.
Now, Dave, you've written quite a few stories in your paper in recent months about the Corrections Department. Does the state have a big problem with its prison system?
I guess it depends who you talk to. If you talk to the governor or if you talk to the head of the Department of Corrections, they say no, that prisons are an inherently violent place and that they do the best they can to provide a safe environment for the surrounding community and for the state in general. Now, if you talk to correction officers or if you talk to inmates or if you talk to their families, you hear a completely different story. You hear a story about prisons that are more violent than they've been in the past. You hear a story about prisons that are understaffed, correctional officers that are overworked and underpaid. So according to the people inside the prison, day in, day out, there is a serious problem.
Now, Senator, you hear obviously from the governor and the administration. You also hear from these other groups. Where do you come down on this? Do we have a problem?
Well, I think there's obviously a problem. And I mean, I think even if you look at the administration, the changing story that we've heard from them, back in July or August when the commissioner was before committee, CSER said all the accusations of increased violent staffing problems were unfounded, not based in fact. But as we continue to see statistics come out, records come out, as we've had independent auditors come in, those accusations have been verified. And so now I think it's really a question of what are we going to do about these problems?
Dave, the department has continued to kind of keep a little bit of that line even after the audit came out. Is the department making a mistake not getting out in front on some of this stuff?
I think it thinks that it is getting out in front. There was recently there was kind of an audit review based on a different audit related to violent incidents, and the commissioner told state lawmakers that he thinks the department has done everything it can to provide data to the public, that it's been upfront about the statistics about violent incidents. At the same time, the department continues to ignore a certain type of incident called a staff inmate provocation that involves an officer and an inmate but is not considered violent. And the number of these incidents continues to rise. The department continues to ignore that as a violent incident, and that continues to remain a problem.
Jeff, do you find that the public cares a lot about this? I mean, unless they have somebody of their own behind bars. I mean, a lot of folks see this as, well, these folks are behind bars, they did something wrong, the courts have put them there, and if they're not escaping, just leave them there, lock up the doors, and throw away the key.
Well, I think everybody in the public has a lot of concern once they start seeing our correctional officers being beaten and assaulted and being in danger. I mean, we're asking those people to keep our community safe, and we're paying them about $13 an hour to do so. The least we can do is make sure that they're in safe working conditions when they're doing it.
Does the study that was done have any credibility? I mean, it was done by the outside accrediting organization, which on the one hand seems to be a pretty good group to go bring in to do the audit, but how much of an audit do they really do, and does this group have credibility doing these kind of things across the country?
So this organization, the ACA, does what it calls accredit correctional facilities. However, there has been a relationship between the ACA and the Department of Correction for previous audits, and this is something that's kind of a standard process. The state has paid thousands of dollars to prepare for these audits and has gone through with flying colors. So from that regard, there have been some questions from some lawmakers. They also spent several hours at a time in some of these prisons, which they thought, as prison experts, was enough time to sort of get a view of what's going on in the prison. I think that officers and inmates would probably argue it takes more than a couple hours on a day when the correctional staff and the inmates know you're coming to really get a true view of what's going on. On the other hand, there are policies that they did review, and they did find issues when they looked at policies regarding how incidents are reported and how officers are scheduled and paid.
Senator Yarbro, what did you think about the study? Did it give you what you needed? Did it need to be more? And what else needs to be done at this point from a legislative point of view?
Well, I think the audit was in some ways an okay start, but you're talking about a 4-page audit. Just this week we had an 84-page audit about food in the prison system. So a 4-page audit on the overall safety and security is not very reassuring. And basically the two issues they looked at, staffing and incident reporting, they recommended significant policy changes. So I think we really do need to see a further investigation that's outside, independent, with a much broader scope to really get at what the culture and morale problems are inside these facilities.
Now, Dave, there was, Senator mentioned this audit that was done this week by the comptroller and about the food. Now, I can remember a time when there was a riot at the state prison here in Nashville because they didn't like the pork chops that were served there.
Yeah.
So food can be an important issue behind bars. But it went much deeper than that. I mean, there's some control issues about what's being done out there in terms of having contracts or oversights for how the state goes about that business, period.
Sure, and they're looking at a business in specifically, it's called Tricor. It's the focus of the business is to provide rehabilitative services for inmates while also providing materials like license plates and meals to prisons. It's a $46 million business a year. And the auditors...
And they're going broke.
Well, right. And the auditors found that they don't have basic financial safeguards. They don't keep the basic financial documents needed to conduct a basic audit. And they didn't have a contract with the Tennessee Department of Correction to provide them meals, even though they provide them millions of meals a year. And so the department thought it would be paying one price, $2.99 for meals, and this agency thought that the department would be paying closer to $3.50 for a meal, and it left them $4 million in the hole. And so that's what the auditors found. The auditor, the comptroller, Justin Wilson, said that this was one of the more serious, cases of mismanagement he's ever seen.
Let's take a break. Dave Boucher, the Tennessean, a reporter who's been covering a lot of the corrections issues in the state's our guest, along with Nashville State Senator Jeff Yarbro. Back to continue our conversation on this and other state topics after you watch these messages.